Welcome back. I'm your host, Ray Harris, and I want to talk to you a little bit about these ruins that I'm in again. So I spent some time today just kind of investigating, kind of like what I want to do with the Bible. You spend some time investigating. And I'm dirty, I hate to admit it, but well, I'm sweaty, for lack of a better term. It is something that happens when you go out and you investigate. You kind of get your hands dirty in order to find out what's going on. But what I found out with this foundation, and I talked about it in our last segment, that this is one corner and off the screen the other direction is another corner. I found the fence that's been put up and it's splitting the foundation. Most of the foundation is on the side where I'm sitting, but there's some foundation over there on that other side. But what I also found was a well, and that well had been probably several feet high with rock. It looked like the rock that made the wall of the well, they pushed in it to fill it in to keep out people from falling in it, or animals and other livestock. So, but I found some old cans, old tin cans, but I also found some old beer cans. So it's very interesting, different time period cans. You can definitely tell by the condition of the cans that they are from different time periods. But somewhere after this fell down, there was definitely a fence put up. And that makes me bring our parable back to the book of Luke. Luke and Acts have become my two favorite books because they provide some information historically about Jesus and the church of that first century. And what I want to do is turn to the book of Luke there in chapter 4, and I want to see that in verse 15 that Jesus teaches in synagogues. And it says here that he went to Nazareth in verse 16. That was where he was brought up. It says here that it was his custom, that means it was his habit to go into the synagogue, and it was done on the Sabbath day, and he was given the book of Isaiah to read. Now what's interesting about this is it says here that he found the place where it is written, which is, by modern day examples, it's Isaiah 61 in the first few verses of that chapter. And that's verse 18 where he reads this. But it says here that he closed the scroll and gave it to the minister, and he sat down. Then he says to them in verse 21, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your ears." Now, what's interesting about this is they get very upset with him. And down here in verse 21 it said, and all that were in the synagogue, when they heard these sayings, were filled with wrath. They took him out of the synagogue and tried to kill him. Now what's interesting about this is I've talked with people about this passage, but what became very prominent to me is, yes, Jesus is declaring his messiahship. That is just very evident from here. But what I did not know until a Messianic Jew had shared this with me is that the passage that Jesus is reading from, historically, the sages taught that only the Messiah could read that. So think of a church habit that you really cannot do, like playing baseball in the auditorium. Now no one would think of that, I guess, because that's what a baseball field's for. But how about throwing a frisbee in an auditorium? You could be kicked out of that auditorium so fast that no one would want you there. Again, they wouldn't take you out to the mountain and try to necessarily throw you over. But the sages had taught that the only one who had permission to read that scripture is the Messiah himself. So Jesus, when he reads Isaiah 61, is becoming very declarative about who he is. And he sets himself into a situation that he knows, because of tradition, has been reserved just for the Messiah. So he knows that he's going to reach and receive opposition to that, but he does it anyway. So he is fulfilling Scripture, yes, in the Scripture in the Christian canon is Genesis to Malachi, but he's also fulfilling the Jewish canon, which is Genesis to Chronicles. And what's very powerful here is that he also fulfills tradition, because nowhere in the Scriptures can you find it that the Messiah is going to read from the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, the first few verses. Only by investigating history like we've done today to try to find out some things about this, this building. Only by investigating the history and the culture and the time frame can you begin to understand who Jesus was more clearly, to better understand more fully why these people became so frustrated with him, ready to the point to throw him down over a cliff. These are powerful things that set him apart from other people, that set him apart from other people who maybe called themselves the Messiah. I'm hoping that in some way this has helped build your faith and build your conviction. And remember, seek God, know Messiah, find hope. I'm your host, Ray Harris.